It definitely is House of Leaves meets Haunting of Hill House meets Blair Witch Project. Hey, I am Sarah. Welcome back to Thrills and Kills Booktube, where we discuss everything horror, thriller, and true crime. Today's video, I am so excited because we are talking about my most anticipated book of all of 2023. And in fact, I really can't remember the last time that I was this excited to get my hands on a new release. And so today we are talking about Craig DiLouie's newest book, episode 13. Can we just take a moment and admire this cover? It even looks like it is found film footage. Just beautiful, matte cover. So today is January 25th. This came out yesterday, January 24th, and was delivered late in the day. So I'm only about 50 pages in. My plan is maybe every 50 to 100 pages, I'll kind of check in with you guys, tell you what my thoughts are. I am anticipating that this will be a 5-star read. I was already anticipating that. And then after I read, honestly, the introduction, I thought, oh yes, if it stays like this will be a 5-star read. One of my favorites of the whole year. So we'll see at the end, does it live up to my expectations? I have been hearing a lot of good stuff from people, and I really hope that this is going to be one of my favorites. But in this is a paranormal investigation gone wrong. This is an epistolary format, meaning that it's not told from a narrator's point of view or even the second or third person. It's told entirely through snippets of media. So things like diary entries, newspaper clippings, transcripts from podcasts, etc. So he's taken it into 2023 with snippets from social media, text messages, etc. Now, this book is again following this cast of this paranormal investigation reality show called Fade to Black. It is a husband and wife team. They have 3 people that work with them, like a cameraman, sort of a researcher, and the guy in charge of the audio. The book starts off with, we are given their backstory and we are getting an insight into why are they drawn to this work? What is it about paranormal investigations that interest them? And they all have differing levels of interest and different things that brought them to the field. There is a house in Virginia called the Foundation House that is known to be one of, if not the most haunted house in all of America. Episode 13 refers to, it's the 13th episode of their series Fade to Black. And they are wanting to go to this house and do an investigation. But this show is known for its high level scientific Anyways, the door just slammed and that really freaked me out. So where was I? All right. So this show they're known for their especially high degree of scientific inquiry. And like I mentioned, it's a husband and wife team, Matt and Claire. Claire actually has a PhD in physics. So she makes sure that every time they're filming that their equipment is dialed in, that they're following the scientific process, that they've got a hypothesis that they're trying to prove. And at the end, she sort of gives her impression of whether there was a scientific explanation for what they saw or not. So that's supposed to be what sets this show aside from other ghost hunter type shows and why they're so popular. There's a secondary timeline and story here where in the 1970s, there was also a paranormal investigation team that set up at the Foundation House and they were doing their own investigation and something went wrong. We don't know what, but the Fade to Black crew is wanting to go there and see if they can get some answers as well as do their own investigation. Now, I will say on the back, there is a little blurb that says this is a beautiful Russian doll of a story. It's House of Leaves meets The Haunting of Hill House in all the best possible ways. That did give me a little bit of pause. So The Haunting of Hill House is my favorite book. Anytime something is sort of compared to that, I'm a little bit like, is it gonna hold up? I hate House of Leaves. That was a DNF. However, now that I'm a little bit in and there's the story within the story, and it's obviously going to be a very multi-layered, complex story, I can see why they would make that comparison. Hopefully it's not that level of weirdness. From the first page, I was gripped. Whoa. Craig DiLouie has very much dedicated himself to creating this world. So the towns that he mentions in Virginia don't actually exist. He mentions old plantations. I Googled. This stuff doesn't actually exist. He has just dedicated to creating this entire fictitious world. To the extent where the very beginning of the book is an editor's note or an author's note. And at first you think this is truly an author's note related to the book. And then you get a few paragraphs in and you realize, no, this is actually fictitious. Let me just read you the beginning. Foundation House in Denton, Virginia is the most documented haunting in American history. Countless media have sought to explain the bizarre events that occurred in the autumn of 2016 during the shooting of Fade to Black's now legendary episode 13. So I just reading that, thought, oh, this is a real place. So I started Googling right off the bat, and that's when it clicked. No, this is just him being dedicated so much to creating this fictitious world. And I love it. It is working so well. I love when authors are able to pull that off really well. It just leads to an extra layer that I just think makes a book a 5-star. Then there is an introduction given the backstory of Matt, who is really the main character as far as the Fade to Black show goes. It was his idea. He's way more into paranormal investigations. His wife is the skeptic. And it gives us the bio from the website and sort of his backstory and what got him interested into the paranormal. And it was so creepy. There was just something very realistic, but at the same time very creepy and like otherworldly about it. I loved it. So I'm here to tell everybody before I keep gushing, you need to get this book. Run, do not walk, go get it from whatever means you buy your books. It's been a week since Grady Hendrix's new How to Sell a Haunted House came out, so I know you've already worked your way through that. Put it to the side, forget that it even exists, because this is going to be way better. If you don't already have it, what are you even doing with your life? Stop watching this video, go get it and read it. I'm gonna do non-spoiler, and then I will have maybe some spoiler discussion at the end, so I will let you know way ahead of time that that's coming. But like I mentioned, this book is an epistolary format. It is 100% epistolary, and we are able to get insight into the characters, their motivations, their backstories, things like their bios from the Fade to Black show website, emails to their family and friends, diary entries, transcripts of interviews with witnesses, that sort of a thing. And you would think that they would all start to sound like the same type of character, the same voice, because it is one author writing this all. But so far, again, I'm only 50 pages in, I'm getting a very distinct feeling for each of the different characters, their personalities, their motivations, their thought process going into this investigation. I'll also say I've read some books before that have either been 100% epistolary or majority epistolary format, and I do think it is really hard to pull off. I wouldn't want to see what that person is seeing and experience that. There is also a line early on in someone's bio and sort of what draws them to the paranormal world, and they're saying, what happens to us when we die? Early on, there is a transcript of an interview with someone who was at the house in the 1970s and describing their experience, what it was like to be a young person going through that experiment. And there is a scene that is just so creepy and so sinister that it just felt realistic, and I was starting to get a shiver. And I will say it was late at night and I was a little bit tired. I had a beer. I don't know if that plays into it. I normally don't have that physical reaction to horror books unless it's extreme goriness. But anyways, it just felt so that really resonated with me, as I'm sure it resonates with many people out there. I mean, that is such a foundational question to the human experience. And I would even argue that's why a lot of religions originally began and why they continue to exist, because human beings as a collective, we want to understand and hypothesize about what happens to us after we die. So that line really struck me and resonated with me, and I think that's going to be a key theme through episode 13, trying to explore what it is that happens to us when we die, and maybe what we think happens is or is not what actually happens. So we'll see how it goes. Again, I'm only 50 pages in so far. If it keeps it up, this is going to be my all-time favorite book of the year. So I will check in with you later on. Okay, hello, it is now Thursday, the 26th, checking in on episode 13. I'm on a page 155. Where I left off previously, I was on about page, I think 50, and we were just at the part where they had showed up to the house and they were getting set up for their first day of their paranormal investigation. We had some fantastic descriptions of the house, walking us through step by step. I was getting a really good understanding of the layout of the house, the different rooms, just the level of disrepair that had been left in because it has been untouched since the 70s. And overall, the way the house is described, I'm getting a really sinister feeling. So hopefully that means that this book is going to have some really creepy stuff about to happen. We are getting a little bit more backstory, like I said, of each of the characters. Now there is a woman named Jessica, but she actually is named something else because she was brought on as an actress. So her character on the show Fade to Black is named Jessica, and she is annoying, but purposely made annoying, because it's very clear when you see depictions of Jessica versus depictions of the real actress who is playing Jessica, like when she's texting her sister, the personalities are different. And so Jessica is very much meant to be like a caricature of this like bubbly reality star character. So I don't think we're meant to really like her. I think she's supposed to be a little bit annoying, especially if you're not someone who likes really bubbly personalities. So around page 70, things are starting to get a little bit spooky, a little bit creepy. They are setting up their ghost hunting equipment, and they're starting to hear sounds like, you know, is it just sounds that an old house makes where like the walls and the door frames are settling or creaking with the wind, or maybe there is a scurrying of something up in the attic, where if you are alone in a house and you believe the house is haunted, those sounds could be a little bit creepy, but there also could very well be a logical, reasonable explanation that does not end in a haunting. So it really just at this point depends on whether you believe in ghosts or not, and the different people on the team fall on different ends of the spectrum with that. There was a really beautiful quote that I think Claire is writing this in her journal, and said, "A haunting is like a mirage that disappears when you examine it too closely. Once it's gone, it pops up somewhere else to invite and taunt you." And I thought, that's so beautiful. And then once you start reading more, I don't want to try and spoil this, but once you start understanding more of the way the house acts or reacts to them, that quote makes a lot more sense. Then we're starting to see more of the interpersonal dynamics play out, and anytime you're on a team of people, whether that's at work, whether you're with a group of your friends or whatnot, you know there is going to be some level of clashing and just certain dynamics that are going to play out. And we are starting to see that in some of the stress that they've been under with their show, and now they're in a very weird set of circumstances. I don't know if this place is haunted or not, and we're just starting to see some of the cracks. I'm already starting to sense some tension that I'm hoping makes for some really good plot devices here. You do start to learn more about Kevin. He's an ex-cop. He comes off as like overbearing, kind of like a douche canoe. I really don't like him, but again, I'm getting the sense that we're meant to not like him versus it's not, what I'm saying is it's not a situation where I just don't like the way the author wrote the character. I'm getting the sense that we're not meant to like Kevin. He just seems really cocky and full of himself when he doesn't really have a reason to be. He just doesn't. He thinks that he is like this ghost hunting extraordinaire, which like that doesn't exist. It's not like a professional designation certification you can get. He's an ex-cop, and for some reason he thinks that like they should all be deferring to what he has to say. It is what it is. There are a lot of informational tidbits where we do learn about the ghost hunting equipment, the EVP monitoring, the spirit box and how that works. I found that stuff to be really interesting. I don't know how much research went into that or how much it's made up, but whatever, I thought it was cool. And then similarly, when we're hearing from Claire, especially when she's writing her journal entries, she does talk about science-related topics, physics, astrophysics, the history of how different things in science were discovered. There is a point where Kevin is sort of making fun of the other people on the team, and this was really funny. So he said, they're running around in the dark, jumping at random noises. It's one way to earn a living, I guess, but it's also a little embarrassing. See, he's trying to come across as this like macho, like cocky guy who's not afraid of anything, and he's kind of poking fun at them. So it will be interesting to see if that holds up, or when it starts getting really spooky, is he just a big old pussy? Who knows? Now there is something that happens. I don't want to say what. We can talk about it at the end when we do like the spoiler section. This is the spoiler free section. So the first thing happens, but I think we're meant to question how it happened or maybe who did it. And I will say I was right. And if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. So I felt like, okay, cool. Like so far I'm following along. I'm usually so like, I don't know what's really happening. I don't guess what's going to happen. So again, we continue to learn more. So Kevin is the audio tech guy, and then Jake is the cameraman. Matt is the lead. He's the husband of the husband and wife team. Like it was his show creation. Claire is the wife. She has the scientific side. And then Jessica is, I don't know, she's like the comedic relief. She's meant to be like the bubbly character, and she helps with research. So here's what I put. Kevin is a weird motherfucker. Jake is a bit creepy. Matt seems like a puppy dog, and Claire is a bit of a bitch. So that's where we're at, but it works. And again, I don't think these are meant to be lovable characters. We'll see how that holds up. There's certainly books and horror movies where you're not really meant to like them, and so I think it makes it easier to digest when bad things happen to people in books and movies. So we'll see. Some books you're meant to like them, some you're not. I did say, I'm not gonna say what page, again, we'll talk about this later with the spoiler section, but I said page blah blah blah. What the fuck was that? So there is, out of nowhere, there is something scary and truly like in your face, like, yes, this is scary happens, but it's also so weird. And I was like, that's not what I was expecting if I thought I was walking into a haunted house and I was looking for proof. That's just not what I would have thought. It's kind of funny now thinking back to it. And in fact, one of the characters is cracking up while it's happening. But I think it was more, have you ever been like really feeling like in an awkward situation, or you have like that nervous laughter, or you just don't know how else to react? Like you just start laughing. That's what it was. This character starts bursting out, like maniacally laughing. And I think that's exactly what I would have done in that scenario. So I can't blame her. So this thing has happened, and now they went out to a diner to get food. And this is what Claire is saying, sort of like how their perspective on the world has dramatically shifted, and the people around them have no idea what just happened. Whatever their beliefs, in the end, they know they live in a normal, predictable world, governed by the laws of physics. Very soon, they'll be awakened. They'll learn it's all an illusion. So, that is where I left off. I am loving it. I really think that this is going to be one of my all-time new favorites, and I'm certainly not going to shut up about this for a long time, as long as it continues to go the way that it's going. There also have been a few references to this sinister, creepy-ass well down in the basement. It's now brought it up multiple times. And in fact, so this is an epistolary, and there is a little sheet at one point where it's showing their B-roll shot list. So like different things that they want to get footage of. And it even has camera angle and all this stuff. And there are a few shots they want to get of Polly's system over the uncovered basement well. And then they want to get a shot looking down into the well. And I was just like, oh fuck no, I can just see it. I'm gonna go on record right now and say something's gonna happen with this well. It's been brought up probably 4 times, just like in passing, little like breadcrumbs here and there. I think that maybe the cameraman is going to try and get a shot like looking down over the well, and something's going to happen. He's going to end up in that well. Or someone is going to end up in the well. I'm calling it now. I'm placing my bet. We'll see how it goes, but I will check in after I've read a little bit more. I'm at the part where the first big scary thing happened, and the team is discussing the amount of force it would take and the energy it would take to be able to do what those spirits did. My hypothesis is that it feeds off of negative energy. So when it all happened, the team had been fighting with each other, screaming, cursing at each other, like lots of really bad juju. So that's my hypothesis, is that it needs that negative energy to feed off of to be able to do what it does to manifest. We'll see if I'm right. Okay, I'm on page 182 and just checking in. So I think it's very interesting thought that this author brings up, which is if ghosts, paranormal, spiritual world, whatever you want to call it, if they do exist, wouldn't they have to follow the laws of physics and of thermodynamics? Meaning, how could something both move through a wall so that it doesn't have any mass to it, no density, it's able to move through a wall, but then how is it also able to do things like a poltergeist would, like pick up objects and move them, that sort of a thing? How can it have both of those properties? All right, so I'm at a point where Claire is writing in her journal because she's the scientist, and I want to read this to you, and then I'm going to pose a question. So this is what she says. Maybe a ghost draws heat from the environment to produce work, which would explain cold spots associated with a spiritual presence. But that would then require a particle capable of this conversion, which itself would heat up and reveal itself as matter instead of energy, as energy is not a thing anyway, but a measure of the ability to do work. Presumably, it would be a particle associated with the once living person, able to store memory and constitute intelligence, and is basically undetectable. Not even the Large Hadron Collider at CERN has spotted it. So here's my question. If you believe in ghosts, even if you don't, but let's say you had proof in front of you, like video, audio proof of something, how do you try and reconcile this in your mind that yes, we all learn about like the laws of physics in high school? How do you reconcile that this thing exists that maybe is not explainable, and that it's not following the laws of physics, versus trying to rationalize it like a scientist would? Do you just have to go off of blind faith and say, well, it doesn't matter? It clearly exists and it's just in its own paradigm and it doesn't follow laws of physics? Or would you be someone who would really want to try to make this fit into the laws of physics as we know them? I don't know. I kind of fall on the side of like, it's enough that we have video, audio evidence that they exist. We don't need to try to make it fit what we see as the laws of physics and laws of nature. I think if it did exist, it would be possible that it doesn't necessarily have to follow the rules as we know them to be. Because she's trying to explain like how what they're seeing doesn't align with the laws of nature and physics. Just, it's something interesting to think about. I knew it! I knew it! There is something with the well. Well, nothing has actually happened yet other than the people in the house seem to think that there is something weird going on with the well. They want to investigate it some more. But I knew it. And another question is, okay, let's say that ghosts both have the ability to move through matter, right? Like they can move through a wall or a door, but they also can move things and manipulate objects. Like they could pick up this book and move it. Is it then possible that a ghost could literally like reach their hand through you, grab your heart, rip it out and kill you like that before you even know that they're around? That's a question that keeps coming up in the book. Like, where is the line of what they can and can't do? Because when we think of ghosts, we think about multiple different things. Like Casper the Friendly Ghost could move through walls, but you definitely think about ghosts throwing things, moving things, knocking on things. So it's either they can be shapeless and massless and move through walls, or they can actually manipulate the environment around them using the laws of physics. You could not do both, but what they have investigated, what they've seen is making them question everything. And I think that's why they're scared, because it's like, you can't defend yourself against a ghost, right? And then they were even talking about whether they should split up or always like be in pairs going through the house. But one person kind of put it like, even if we're all together, like, what's gonna happen? We can't protect ourselves from them if they can literally like kill you. So just, I never thought about it like that. Something interesting to think about if you're ever in a haunted house. So I am about, 50% of the way through. I was not seeing this, like, coming in a million years. I don't know who's haunting who at this point. That's, like, the only way I can explain it. Like, my mouth literally dropped when I was reading it, because I was not. And, like, I don't really get surprised. I don't really have, like, visceral reactions to books unless it's, like, you know, extremely gory, disturbing stuff. I need to put it down, but we'll talk about this at the end in the spoiler section, because nope, just never in a million years did I expect that. I didn't expect to see that coming. The parts though where we get the little flashbacks into the PRF, the Paranormal Research Foundation, people in the 70s, that is so cool. So Claire spends an entire day up in the office looking through their old case files and notes, and you start seeing more about what they were up to. The scene where they're talking about like someone ate their own fingers as a reaction to what they were going through. So it's creepy and surreal, but at the same time, like, I feel like I'm reading a true account, like, and I feel so close to these people, even the ones I don't like. And so it's making me really upset, because like, you have this impending sense of doom that you know this is not going to end well for them. It's like in the blurb of the book, and like, it's pretty clear from the first page it's not going to go well. And at the same time, it's like, it's just heartbreaking, because you're reading their diary entries and it just seems so real, and you can tell how afraid they all are, and they're not talking to each other. They're putting it in their journal entries, but they won't admit to each other how afraid they are of what's going on. Halfway through, I'm gonna try and maybe get another 50 pages tonight, Thursday, and then try to finish it tomorrow, Friday, so I can get this video up over the weekend. All right, next check-in for episode 13. I'm on page 255 now. Where we last left off, this big reveal happened where they have proof that it is, you know, a haunted house. They are continuing to have like dreams about each other. It's interesting, ever since they are first coming into contact with this house and with the entity, they are starting to have nightmares, like almost paranoid nightmares of either they are harming someone else or someone's harming them. Just very interesting getting into their mindset and what they are writing in each of their journal entries. They're also starting to admit that they are afraid, but neither of any of them actually are admitting to each other that they're afraid, and they're almost sort of starting to like turn on each other. It's just really sad to see, because these people are obviously so close, especially like, you know, it's a husband and wife and they've all been working on the show together. So it's just really sad to see that they're sort of breaking down in the midst of all of this. So they're just not trusting each other. They're just starting to be nasty to each other. I will say Jake does have these funny little quips, and he does really lay into Kevin at one point, and he's basically like, dude, I don't like you because you're no longer a cop, but you still act like you're a cop. I keep thinking that there is definitely something sinister happening in that well, and that the well is gonna pop up and something pretty significant is gonna happen. You cannot convince me otherwise. It's also interesting that there seems to only be activity at night. We'll see if that continues or if it starts to become like a 24/7 paranormal haunting situation. And again, the diary entries are starting to get more and more personal. They are explaining that they're afraid, and that I think is really doing a good job of getting you into their mindset, but also making you feel close to them. There is a section where we get to see the notes of this Dr. Gloria Flick, who was one of the investigators in the 70s. And there's this really ominous, sinister line where all it says is, "The door changes everything." And I was like, what do you mean? What door? What is this? Because we don't get any more explanation. And you're just like, oh my God, that's really terrifying. What door? Is it in this house? Is it like an actual door? Does she mean like a portal door? Did they go through it? Can you come back out? Does the ghost come through it? Like, I have so many questions and I can't wait to get to that part. There was also some really beautiful quotes in this section. When Claire is writing in her journals and discussing her scientific process. And I really thought that these really encapsulate sort of like why people are so interested in the paranormal, what drives people to want to watch paranormal investigations or go to haunted houses, go on tours, that kind of a thing. So the first one was, since we cannot trust our perceptions regarding this entity, which operates outside our understanding of how the physical universe operates, by definition, any action we take to engage is evidence of our madness. And then there was another line, the fear of not understanding the entity is greater than the fear of being harmed by it. And I think especially after they continue to make contact, our current team, the Faded Black team, as a reader, you're kind of like, get the hell out of there. What are you doing? But in their minds, especially Claire, this is a scientific breakthrough. This is what they've been spending their whole life working towards. And they would rather put themselves in harm's way than go the rest of their lives not knowing any more about this. I think a lot of people who are really passionate about a topic, or especially if you're like have an extreme hobby, you probably feel the same way. You know, it's probably what led to people to climb Mount Everest, that feeling of like you'd rather be in harm's way and do something than go the rest of your life knowing that you didn't at least attempt it. And then at one point, things take a major turn. We're now in Matt's head, and he's writing in his journal entry, and he's discussing how, like, when you watch found footage horror movies, there's usually like a really corny line where they're running away or they're in harm's way and someone continues to film, and then someone else in the group is like, why are you filming this? And it always happens. Someone tends to have a line along the lines of, well, someone has to document it. And Matt is saying he always thought that was so corny, but now that he's living it, like, he understands why you would need to continue to have someone to document it. So that is where I'm at now. I will check in a little bit later. Hello, I'm back doing another check-in on episode 13. I'm now on page 390. So the last 100 pages or so, this is definitely where it feels like House of Leaves, like layers within layers within layers, but not in an obnoxious way. I know House of Leaves is very polarizing, so I don't want that to like turn people off. But I definitely am seeing why they made the comparison to House of Leaves. This is just like, this whole last part is just so heartbreaking, because you're continuing to see the breakdown in the team and them trying to like face their worst fears. And I can't really say what they're going through. I'll talk about it in the spoiler section, but it's just so sad, like what is going on and whether you stick together through trials and tribulations, or is it every man for themselves? And yeah, it's just depressing. It's really the only way I can put it. I'll also say the book kind of took like a hard left turn. This is not what I thought was going to happen when they started really investigating more, like where everything was coming from. This is not what I thought was going to happen. So that's cool. I always like being surprised. We also see what people's true motivation was for joining the team and wanting to do paranormal investigations. So yeah, I've got about another 50 pages or so. I'm not really sure how this could get any crazier or wilder. We'll see. I think where I just left off, I think things are really about to kind of blow up right now. So one question I do have, which hopefully it'll answer at the end, because all throughout, like, there's editorial notes. So obviously someone found their footage, their journals, and put it all together into this true account. I'm getting the feeling something bad happens to them, which is not a spoiler. That's very clear from the blurb. How is all of their footage and their journals? How is it all found? That was really sad. That was really sad. Yeah, I'm gonna need to think about that. Yeah. That was sad. So anyways, let me collect my thoughts so I can put this into a more cohesive manner, and then we'll wrap this up and then we'll get to the spoiler section. It is now Friday afternoon and I have finished episode 13. I'm gonna do my final thoughts without spoilers, and then I'll give you a moment to shut off the video, and then we're gonna talk about spoilers for those of you who have read the book. I'm so glad this lived up to my expectations as far as if I would like it. Loved this book. It did not live up to my expectations in that it took a hard left turn and I was not anticipating it to become the type of book it became. So, 5 stars. It definitely is House of Leaves meets Haunting of Hill House meets Blair Witch Project. But if you didn't like House of Leaves, don't be scared off, because I feel like a lot of people, they liked the idea of House of Leaves, but they didn't like the format and how it was very hard to actually physically read it. This is House of Leaves in the idea, the premise, like layers within layers, but it's a straightforward, other than epistolary, it's a straightforward, like you're following a linear timeline. It's not like footnotes and a documentary about a story about it. It's easy to read. That being said, I'm not gonna tell you at what point, so I don't want you to know it's coming, but it takes a hard left turn and you were like, whoa, this is much more philosophical. This is like a weird horror book. Yes, it's paranormal, but it's like straight up weird. There were some parts I had to reread, maybe like Claire's journal entries. I had to just go slow and reread them because there was a lot of scientific, like theoretical stuff going on and talking about mass and energy and physics. And I'll just be straight up with you, I got like a C in high school physics. So that part I had to just stop and really think and reread paragraphs maybe 2 or 3 times. So if you're trying to speed read, this is probably not the book for you. And I could definitely see how some people won't like it because of those parts, but they're just here and there. It definitely plays an important part because Claire is the main character and it's like about her motivations, but it's not the entire book. I personally thought it was very easy to sympathize with the characters, to get into their heads, understand their motivations, where they're coming from very quickly because of the format, the epistolary format. You are reading firsthand their text messages, their emails, their journal entries, and they're being, I mean, like writing in a diary, they're being very vulnerable and open and real in those entries. So you are not learning about someone else through the point of view of a different narrator, right? Like Claire is not telling you about someone else's motivations. You are reading their motivations from their own words. I did read some reviews where people felt that this format did the opposite, that they thought it was hard to get close to the characters and in their minds. I guess that's just up to everyone's interpretation. I felt like I knew them right off the bat. I love how different they were. I feel like all throughout the book, DiLouie did a fantastic job of having distinct voices. I personally feel like if you're gonna have more than one point of view, they need to be distinct. They need to stand out from each other. Otherwise, what's the point? Then just have one main narrator giving like a first person point of view. I also really love that this is basically a found footage horror movie or like found footage horror documentary as a book. I'm sure more of those exist out there. I haven't read too many of them, other than like you could say House of Leaves is that, and then this, and I think that's really all I've read. So I think he did a great job. I love the way it was put together. I love the variety of items that were used. And then at the end, it does sort of flash forward a few years and you are reading transcripts from like news articles or other true crime documentaries that were made about the events that happened. Thought that was really fun and kind of gave us a little bit of closure. It does answer the question about how do their journals and their cameras get back to the house where they could be discovered and shared with the broader world. It does answer that. And the last thing I'm going to say before we move on to the spoiler section is don't go near a fucking open well in a basement of a haunted house. I knew it. I called it from the very beginning that well was sinister and something was going on. It was probably pretty obvious, but I just liked the fact that I saw it coming. So 5 stars. I could definitely see certain people not liking it. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. This is like my new personality, my new favorite book. I'm now going to talk about some spoiler parts. So this is your time to turn off this video, go read the book. Please come back later after you've read it and let me know your thoughts. But right now we're moving on to the spoiler section. Okay, hi, hello, welcome to the spoiler section of episode 13. So you finished it like I did. Did you love it like I did, or did it not work for you? Again, I can definitely see how there's gonna be people out there it's not gonna work for them, but I particularly like weird stuff, and I think this is gonna be a new favorite of mine. Did anyone else see the well coming? There was obviously a point where it was quite clear that the well was gonna come into play, but early on when they were just mentioning about like getting the B-roll footage down at the well, did anyone else see it coming like me? Because I was like, what the fuck is this well? I wouldn't go near it. And I even put a little poll up on my Instagram stories, and there was a few people who were like, yeah, I would go to the well. I would go look at a well that's uncovered in the basement. Because all I'm picturing was, I for sure thought someone was gonna like lean over, maybe the cameraman, to maybe get some footage, and I thought like a ghost was gonna come up and like pull them down, or like a demon was gonna pull them down into the wells. That's all I could picture. Okay, so now let's talk about when they're like down in the labyrinth and the maze and this like subterranean Hades underworld. What the fuck was that? Poor Jared. I mean, he was a bit odd. He was like an odd duckling, kind of like a misfit loner, but I feel really bad what happened. I mean, obviously they all die in the end, but I just feel really bad, and him being so scared of like his dad was there. And how interesting is it that he got a knife? So did he already have that knife on him and he hallucinated that like his dad was there with a knife, or was that a spirit, being his father, and the spirit like gave him a knife? We know he had a knife because that's how Kevin said like, well, he was coming at me with a knife and I shot him in self-defense. I'm just wondering how that manifested. All right, and so my take on the whole hippy dippy music that they were playing, like the White Rabbit song, and then all the like weird hippie slogans, like and cues from the 60s and 70s, like the whole like you're either on the bus or off it. You're either on the bus or off it. My thought was, because the timing down there, it was like a time warp, maybe they didn't realize how far in the future it was above ground in the real world, and so they were trying to use current cultural clues and context to lure people in as like an invitation to come down the well and through the door. I don't know, it was just so weird. And like the flower people, it was so weird. I was just trying to make up what could be a rational explanation, so let me know what your thoughts are. And then the last scene with Matt and Claire really broke my heart. I thought that was so sad because he clearly loved her a lot more than she loved him. Like for her, it seems like her number one love was science and her scientific pursuits, and she was willing to give him up and leave him behind in order to gain all the answers. And that was so sad when she says like, oh, you have to leave all your earthly things behind, and he realizes like that includes him and that she's willing to give him up. that was heartbreaking. But at least she put him out of his misery, I guess. And then my final thought was, okay, the very end, we realize it's Jessica and she's escaped 5 years later. How did she get out? Because the door was gone. Like when the police came and they were doing an investigation, it said the door at the bottom of the well was not there. So how did she get out? I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, so those are all my thoughts about episode 13. Definitely a weird book, definitely different than I was expecting. But for me, I think this is going to be maybe not a new all-time favorite, but probably a favorite horror book of 2023. I love everything Craig DiLouie writes, so I am definitely hoping he does more, especially more in the paranormal realm. Let me know your thoughts down below if you've read it. Did you like it or did it not work for you? If you haven't read it, let me know if you're planning to get to it soon. That's all I have for you guys today. Stay tuned. Coming up, I'll have some videos on recent book hauls and putting together an entire video researching cults. It's going to go very in depth, not just like pop culture about cults, but what does the actual sociology and psychology research say? That's everything for today. Hope you guys have a good one. Bye.